These guys in this clip are power-hungry freaks who need to be removed from their positions of authority and never given a gun and a license to kill again, because that's what they've got right now.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
We have on the line Dave Kamper, a researcher for the Economic Policy Institute, and author. We talked to him a couple of months ago, I think, about his new book. You should check it out. But he is also a resident of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so he was able to be there for what looked to me to be what amounted to the first general strike basically since 1946 is the last time that it looks like there was a general strike in the U.S. You know, I mean, this had genuinely the support of unions. Lots of businesses closed, lots of workers called out. So really, you know, a really exciting thing that happened yesterday that is unfortunately now being dampened by reports of a person being shot by federal law enforcement. I think it's ICE in Minneapolis again today. Unclear about the status of the victim. But Dave, thank you for taking the time to talk to us this morning. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a roller coaster 24 hours.
Yeah, I guess, you know, I guess the first thing is, you know, it's been, I think the first reports of this shooting came out about 2.5 hours ago, and I don't know if you've been able to monitor that any closer than I have, but what is your understanding of the state of play with respect to the shooting that happened this morning?
Yeah, and I'm only relying upon what I've been seeing on the news myself, but the Minneapolis police are reporting that the man died. There's video out that's very disturbing, and I would encourage caution before anyone watch it. This guy is clearly being tackled by 5, 6, 7 ICE officers. His arms are folded up around his chest. He's struggling like anybody would struggle when you're being tackled by 5, 6, or 7 people, but he is on the ground. He is completely on the ground. And 2 officers, at least by the video, step back and just frankly put a bunch of rounds in him. And it's terrible, and it's horrifying. And Minneapolis police has said he's died. PBS says he's 51. I'm 51. This is frightening and horrible. And there's no way this isn't some kind of retaliation for the fact that 50,000, 75,000 of us showed up yesterday in joyful solidarity to protest ICE. Wow.
Yeah, it just came up on my Twitter feed as you were describing it, and you were describing it exactly. I mean, Jesus, that's insane. And so, you know, I've seen reports about Minnesota and Minneapolis officials reiterating their calls for ICE and the federal government to get out of Minnesota. And so, you know, I don't know at this point, you know, fortunately for us, as a weekly program, we do not have to typically do very much like breaking news, and this is really about as breaking as it gets. And so I don't know that there's really much else to say about it. You always learn a little bit more, and so, you know, I would encourage people, if you're watching this, to continue watching, you know, seeing what develops, and there'll probably be a clearer picture by the time that we release this as a clip. So I don't know that there's much else to say about that, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about what happened yesterday, and that's a little bit, a little bit more hopeful to talk about. So, Dave, were you able to actually go out? The one of the most inspiring things about yesterday is that 50 to 75,000 people came out in the streets, and just to illustrate that number, actually, we got a clip from Twitter. Let's play clip 6 just so that folks watching can get a sense for the scale of the demonstrations yesterday. So just huge crowd sizes, between 50 and 75,000 people out, actually physically in public, outside, in sub-zero temperatures. You got to think about how many more people would have been out if it was just a little bit more temperate. And then, there were probably a lot of people who called out sick and kind of, did the, and went on strike basically without going out and demonstrating. But Dave, were you able to be out yesterday?
Yes. I was one of the marshals for the march. We have a pretty big infrastructure of mostly labor people who have over many years become kind of trained to be marshals for events like this. And so there were about 100 of us. And we were just kind of trying to keep the peace, which we did, and to keep the crowd moving. It was incredibly cold. We should have all bought stock in the hand warmer manufacturers before, because everybody had them. But I was standing on one street corner, kind of guarding or sort of blocking, holding the intersection, and the crowd took more than 2 hours to walk past me. And I tried to estimate a couple of times, and there were at least 200 people a minute going past. Probably more like 300, 400, 500 a minute. So we're probably talking 40, 50,000 people who just walked past me on that street. It was incredibly inspiring because, like, we're in Minnesota. It's cold. This was cold. It was -10. They cancel school when it's -10. There's an exploding tree warning out right now because trees can explode. And there were 50,000 people out there. It was incredibly, it was amazing.
Yeah, the dedication and the resilience to have that many people, that doesn't just happen for no reason, right? And so that's probably a good opportunity to talk a little bit about what was it, Dave, that pushed so many people out to the streets.
It's not just one thing. The murder of Renee Good is certainly one of the key catalysts, but it's just the ongoing insult. I'm an historian by training, and I can't help but think of the Fugitive Slave Act in the 1850s, where northern cities were made by the federal government to round up people accused of being escaped slaves. And it was that complicity that they were required to be in that turned so many northerners towards the side of abolitionism when they otherwise were sitting on the fence. What's happening here in Minneapolis is that ordinary citizens here in the Twin Cities, and I should say I technically live in the suburbs. I live in Brooklyn Park. I don't want stolen valor here to say I'm in the heart of Minneapolis. But what's happening is ordinary citizens are seeing these things happening right outside their doors to people they know, to people they care about. And it's radicalizing people by the day. And not just sort of your usual suspects. The crowd yesterday was as many people over 40 as under 40. There were faith leaders, there were students, there were parents, there were grandparents, there were people, whole families with strollers and things, bringing their kids along. This is a community-wide reaction to this, to the indignity of seeing these horrible things happening next to them every single day.
Some of the conservative types will respond and say, "Oh, they're getting the worst of the worst." And I've got some of these numbers, and so if you don't have them offhand, I've got a little bit of it. But I don't know if you have any response to those assertions that all these people that they're rounding up are illegal criminals.
Yesterday, 2 days ago, they took a 5-year-old kid. And they were trying to bait the person's parents to come out of the house so they could grab them. They grabbed a Hmong citizen and dragged him out of his house in his underwear with a blanket over him. He was 70 years old. There may very well be some people here who have been convicted of crimes who happen to be being picked up. But what's happening is ICE is getting in their fancy SUVs. They're driving around. They see a brown person. They're getting out and grabbing him and throwing him into their car. That's what they're doing. There's nothing more targeted, more specific than that. There's, among other things, as this being a labor report, there's absolutely no action being taken against employers who are paying sub-minimum wages, who are violating labor laws. If you worry about immigration and jobs, and frankly, you shouldn't, but if you do, the way to address that is to have enforceable labor standards so that all employers are held responsible for who they employ. That would resolve the whole problem without having to kidnap anybody or shoot anybody. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And if they were so confident in the percentages of people that are actually have been convicted of heinous crimes that they're getting out of the country, then they would release the data. But they haven't been releasing that data since, I believe it's October or November. They haven't released the data, the comprehensive data of people that they have that they have basically abducted, and in some cases deported. Instead,
they tried, I think at the beginning of this week, to claim something like 1,300 people had been who were criminals were turned over to ICE, and actually the Minnesota Department of Corrections, hardly a radical institution, came out with a correction and said, no, nearly every single one of those was someone who was already in a Minnesota prison for some other, who had been convicted of crime, and that upon their release, as is per normal practice, they were turned, over to the custody of Customs and Border Patrol or immigrant. And like, this was not because of these stormtroopers on the street. It was normal practice that they're trying to claim credit for. It's the routine lying is just epic right now.
Exactly. And the numbers that we were getting up until October or November, and there's every reason to believe that the numbers look worse for the administration now. For one, because they're not releasing it, and for two, because the actions have only increased by ICE and DHS and CBP, and so there's every reason to believe that the numbers look worse now than they did in October, November, and in October, November, the numbers that we have, only 5% of the people that were deported had a violent conviction. Only 8% had a violent conviction or a property conviction, and 73%, it was like 60 or 70% of the people that had been taken and deported had zero pending charges or convictions. Not even just like, do you have a traffic ticket or whatever. And so, like, even among the people that the 40% of people that had convictions, the vast majority of those were like traffic tickets or something like that, right? And so the idea that it's just the numbers do not demonstrate that. So, and you mentioned that if there was a real interest in protecting workers, what you would be doing is going after employers who are abusing undocumented immigrants and native-born workers. I'm curious why you think that the unions decided to go to get involved so heavily, and what you make about some of the capital D discourse, I guess, on Twitter about whether or not it's proper to call this a general strike. There are some, kind of people that are saying this is worthless, this doesn't mean anything, this isn't a general strike or whatever, that I was kind of flummoxed by, actually. But so do you think this is a general strike? And to the extent that it is or isn't, why did unions get involved as much as they did?
So it's an interesting question. I think it is both more than and less than a general strike. The reason is this is genuinely a community action far beyond just workplace action, right? The morning, before the big march, there were a couple hundred faith leaders who literally flew in around the country to protest at the airport. A bunch were arrested. There are businesses that are not unionized businesses by the hundreds that voluntarily close their doors in recognition of this. So there's something broader to the community beyond just a workplace strike. But I think there was also a workplace element to it. And a big part of it is labor. Minnesota, especially the Twin Cities, has a very tight-knit labor community. You look at the last 20 years, and a lot of the rest of the country, for example, has seen a lot of conflict between Service Employees International Union, SEIU, and other unions over the change to win split and the other things. That never happened in Minnesota. Everyone stayed friends in Minnesota. And they've built this incredibly tight-knit community where everyone looks out for each other. And it's really this sort of we're looking out for each other aspect that I think is the most Minnesotan part of it. And that's why I feel like general strike isn't the whole thing. This is an exercise in community self-care. We're looking out for each other here, and we're sending a message that we're looking out for each other, and we're willing to put ourselves, on the line to do so. Obviously, unfortunately, someone made that ultimate sacrifice again today. As we speak, there are dozens of people around Minnesota right now trailing ice with cameras. They didn't stop because someone got killed. And that's more than a general strike, but also general strike is inadequate in that way. So yes, there was a general strike, but there was something more than a general strike, is what I would say, which is I think we trying to have it both ways.
Yeah. And so what is it that you think that, and I know we're going to have to let you go soon, so this may be the last question that we have for you, but I'm curious what you make of the decision of not only unions, right? Because an individual local union saying to, essentially violate the contract and go on strike, or maybe winking and nudging and encouraging their members to do that. That's one thing. But the labor federations in Minneapolis and Minnesota, the Labor Council and the State Federation, also engaged in the, I think explicit calls to call out of work and take the day off and go out and protest if you can. And so there was kind of winks and nudge from the labor federations to kind of, give people a little bit of leeway in what they decided to do. But, there's like explicit rules against labor federations telling people to go on strike and to participating in collective bargaining, and certainly against violating union contracts. And so to me, that seems like a big step for the council, the labor councils and the state federations to make this move to, at the very least, implicitly encourage their members to go on strike. Am I right that to interpret this as a huge move? And why did they make that move?
You are absolutely right. And actually, one of the biggest pieces of it is that it wasn't just the Minneapolis and St. Paul regional labor federations, but it was the rural, what we call Greater Minnesota labor federations as well. So not just the Metro core. And to me, the thing that has an underdeveloped story here is that if you look at central labor councils around much of the country, what marks them out as inactivity is that most of the big unions aren't engaged in them, and that the people who end up on those central labor councils probably don't represent organized labor as a whole. Well, in Minnesota, every union is engaging in their central labor council. It's actually a pretty big deal that our teachers union is merged, and so all those NEA members who in all the other states aren't even part of the AFL-CIO are part of the AFL-CIO here, and that's why an Education Minnesota member is the president of the Minnesota AFL-CIO. Why a former Minneapolis Federation of Educators leader is over at the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation. We have, again, for many years, all unions have been engaged in the central labor bodies, and those central labor bodies have been active and engaged in lots of things for many years. There's been some conflict and tension over that. During the George Floyd riots, there was a real back and forth over the possibility of some law enforcement staging out of the Regional Labor Federation office, and they got kicked out. And there was some discomfort with that. But the truth is, the unity across labor here is deeper and wider than in a lot of other places. And that's the conscious effort of scores of union leaders and tens of thousands of union members over many years to build ourselves something that really stands together. It's something I wish I could claim any kind of credit here. I can't, but I can be proud of it for being part of it.
Something that somebody in Minneapolis said that's a difference between now and George Floyd is that, yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned that. That's why I thought about it. The internal dissension and like division because the murder was committed by somebody that was a part of the Minneapolis community, and so there was kind of there was just kind of a dispersed rage against Minneapolis as an institution, whereas these are intruders. This is an outside force coming in and harassing Minneapolis. And so now the feeling of unity is much stronger, according to at least one account. And there's not like interest in rioting and attacking, the police building or local businesses and stuff, because it's the entire Minneapolis and Twin Cities and Minnesota community against the federal government. Does that track with how you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a terrible way to have unity, but it is making us recognize that we're all in this together. And so again, this is terrible. And what happened this morning is unspeakably tragic. it is helping to build a sense of community. And I wish it didn't require tragedy. I wish it didn't require armed stormtroopers in the street. But if we're going to have armed stormtroopers in the street, let's use the opportunity to build some community together. And I really do think that's what we're seeing here. I would be stunned if this was the end of it. I think we're going to see more engagement from Minnesotans. I think we're going to see more radicalization from everyday Minnesotans. I think you're going to see faith leaders and labor leaders standing side by side in the weeks and months to come. I think it potentially could be a real sight to behold.
Dave, thank you so much for taking the time on such short notice to talk to us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Solidarity.
Dave Kamper is a researcher with the Economic Policy Institute, a member of his union, the Nonprofit Professional Employees Union, NPEU, Local 70, and author of the book, Who's Got the Power? The Resurgence of American Unions, and a resident of the suburbs of Minneapolis. We've got, there's a whole bunch of union press releases that we can kind of pull from. But Adam, I'm curious if you've got any responses or thoughts about that conversation before we dive into that. And folks, if you want to call in, 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. Would love to hear from you if you're from Minnesota. If you're not from Minnesota, interested in your thoughts as well. But Adam, go ahead.
Well, I don't have a lot to add beyond just really appreciating that perspective from Dave. And it does make me feel a little more hopeful, that kind of unity, that kind of solidarity that's being expressed there. We talk about it all the time on this show that our only hope is people power, right? Like, the bad guys have a lot. They have a lot of money. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of force. But we have our people power, our strength in numbers, and I really am inspired by the Minnesotans out there who are organizing and who are showing up for each other. I think that's really, really important. And so I really also appreciated what Dave shared about the CLCs, the Central Labor Councils, and the institutions there, in the ability to work together, to participate, because, the sad thing is, so much of our labor movement across the country, particularly here in the South, is just so underdeveloped, compared to the movement in the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So, I think it's a call to action for all of us, on how we can build a movement that can, aspire to that kind of activity, that can build that kind of unity and diversity. So I think that's really a call to action for all of us. And, last weekend, we talked a little bit about Dr. King, and we played some clips from Dr. King in honor of the holiday. And, I think it's just a good reminder that throughout the history of this country, every bit of positive change has come from people power. It's come from everyday people organizing for positive change from the bottom up. If you look at throughout the history of the 20th century, the labor movement in the 30s, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the peace movement. Look at the 19th century. Dave brought up abolition and the abolitionist movement. I mean, hell, the American Revolution itself, right? So our entire history is a history of push and pull, and everyday people banding together to try to find a more just future and a more just community for all of us, to try to get this country to live up to its promises and its ideals. And, so that's really sitting with me on how we in the South can make change and how we break through, because we know we have so many of our brothers and sisters out there who don't think like this, and who are very, very propagandized, and who are very divided and confused. I mean, that's the reality in the South, is a lot of our working class brothers and sisters have been captured by bigotry and confusion and propaganda. And it's our job to educate and to reach people and to build that kind of strength and solidarity.
Yes, absolutely. As we said, lots of unions and labor federations in Minneapolis participated in the action and released statements about it. And it's really, really, I don't know, it's exciting to hear or to see. We've got a caller on the line. This one from a 229 area code. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. 229 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Tim calling from Asheville, North Carolina. Wanted to branch off of the Minnesota stuff, but also talk a little bit about what's going on in Asheville with Asheville City Association of Educators.
All right, Tim. Yeah, let us know your thoughts.
Yeah, so just biggest shout outs ever. Solidarity, respect, everything to the St. Paul Federation of Educators. My local and St. Paul have been doing some work together for the last year, and they are the real deal. And yesterday, my statewide union, North Carolina Association of Educators, there was a call out to have people wear blue at work to stand in solidarity with Education Minnesota. So those people are some absolute real ones.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the teachers' unions have really been helpful, I think, across the country. So yeah, and I know some people actually that work for the Minneapolis Federation of Educators. So yeah, and we've had remember just a couple of months ago we had Brenda Johnson from the MFE on the program talking about their contract and how they were getting ready to strike over their contract, and it looks like they ended up striking over ICE. So yeah, I mean, really, really cool folks over there. I agree, Tim.
Yeah, and Tim, before you continue, I just wanted to say we mentioned earlier in the show about a big victory in Austin, Texas, where the AFSCME local there now has kind of a meet and confer sort of policy. It's the first city in Texas to enact this kind of policy where management has to consult with the union before changing policy for employees. And so I thought about you and I thought about what's been going on over in North Carolina. So yeah, glad you called.
Dang, that's absolutely awesome to hear. Yeah, I super love that for Austin. Yeah, you want me to tell you about most?
Yeah, what else is going on?
Yeah, what's going on in North Carolina?
Cool. So we met last Wednesday last week. And as of now, the main things that we've won are more ways to work from home on optional work days or inclement weather days. And then we also worked on a better inclement weather policy. We came to consensus on both of those, both sides. And so our last meeting was on the 15th, or no, it was on the 14th. But then on the 15th, we had inclement weather. And the district did not follow the revisions that we had discussed just the night before. So people are very upset. There was a lot of inclement weather. There's inclement weather this weekend. We most likely won't be back until Tuesday or Wednesday because of weather in the area. So people are really upset about our district not following what they said they agreed to. Our next meeting is February 11th. So the union will be bringing up the breach of process, basically, and the amount of people that were put into harm's way.
Right. Well, Tim, appreciate your work and all that y'all are doing for teachers up there, and yeah, I look forward to seeing y'all continue to win.
Oh yeah, thank you, man.
All right, thanks for the call.
Yeah, appreciate the call and appreciate the report. Love to hear the good work happening. Do not love to hear that the district forgot about its own policy it talked about the night before. Do not love to hear that, but that's why you got to hold them accountable, and I know y'all will. So go Asheville.
Yeah, and this is just a reminder to us that negotiations is just one of the tools in the tool belt. There are other ways that you can accomplish things. We like to have the sit-down negotiations. They're the most formal. They're the best way we think to do it. But sometimes it doesn't get you what you need.
Right, and even once you get, I mean, like you just demonstrated, even once you get a policy or in other situations, if you get a contract and you get a clause in the contract. I mean, when we were talking to the stagehands earlier in the program, she talked about how they had a clause in their contract with this venue for years that went unenforced and so was consistently violated, right? And so you gotta, getting the thing in writing is great, but yes, you do have to actually enforce it, and you've got to hold management accountable.
So, yeah, appreciate that reminder.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Let's get to this caller,
217 area code. Let's bring them on the air. 217 area code. What is your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, my name's Brandon. I'm calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Brandon from Atlanta. What's on your mind?
Yeah, sorry. It sounds like y'all have moved on a little bit, but I wanted to call in about what's going on in Minneapolis again. And just in general, I agree with what you're just saying. I think it applies to what I'm about to say, too. Everything moves so slow. The direct action is really the only way forward. But it was pretty amazing to me to see the AFL-CIO and, all these like union federations and different labor organizations totally jumping in with what's going on in Minneapolis and Minnesota. I think we are living in an historic moment. Unions don't take action on political issues like this anymore. I mean, it's been 80 years since we had a general strike. I think the ruling class is panicking right now looking at this because, the unions haven't been in this for so long and they've been counting on the unions staying out of it. So with AFL-CIO being involved and endorsing, and even like the city council in Minneapolis. But yeah, the AFL-CIO, as soon as I saw what happened this morning, another murder by ICE and CBP in Minneapolis, I instantly called my AFL-CIO local here in Atlanta. I've never spoken to them before, but we keep talking to people in our union here. I'm a Teamster, and difficult to get people on the same page with us. And somebody on the board recommended the AFL-CIO. So, I left a message.
You
with
broke
them
up,
and,
Brandon. You broke up for just a second. You said,
if you care about this
can
stuff,
you hear me, Brandon?
You should also do the same thing. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. You broke up for just a second. You said
Yeah,
You said somebody recommended you do, and then you kind of broke up a little bit.
Oh, okay. They recommended I call the AFL local to us. And yeah, because I saw them be active in Minneapolis, I thought, okay, maybe I should actually do that. So, we got to strike while the iron's hot. Everyone's really angry about this right now. And I think we should pressure the AFL-CIOs near to us, point at what they did in Minnesota and say, hey, it's really critical we do this right now. The solidarity strike, the political strike, it has to come back into our consciousness and on the agenda for unions. Or, frankly, I think if we don't do this, our right to unionization is going to go away.
Yeah, I totally agree, Brandon. And Brandon, you said that you were a Teamster, and so I would love to know how your fellow members are reacting to any of this. And I don't know how much. The person that you were talking to said that, or I don't know if there was a recommendation that you get the Teamsters to participate in the Labor Council, but I would definitely recommend that. I mean, as as kind of lackluster and, sort of on the sidelines as many labor councils are. Dave talked about how that's kind of unfortunately the mark of labor councils across the country is that they're just not really doing anything.
Yeah.
But you certainly don't make that better by not participating and not being involved where they exist. And so, I definitely recommend, the Teamsters in Atlanta participating in the labor council as much as possible. But how are your members, reacting to all of this ICE stuff?
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, so I'm part of an organization called Warehouse and Shipping Workers Against ICE, launched, I think, in June, so it's a fairly new organization. So yeah, I've been talking to my coworkers a lot since then, and I've spoken to, I don't know, personally spoken to, I would say at least, 300, 500 people about this. And I've met one solitary person who was just like, no, you're wrong. A lot of people are just kind of like, wow, that's crazy, and like kind of try not to take a, people don't want to be divisive in the workplace and stuff like that, but you kind of give some basic facts about what's going on. And, people don't want to see just like random executions in the street, right? And so people I would say people are reticent to get active, but the fact that the Minneapolis Teamsters local posted a statement in support, the AFL-CIO there, like, I think we can use that leverage to, kind of reach out to our rank and file members and say, look, see, the union leadership is on board with this, and kind of like give them permission to speak their mind, and because like, especially in the South, like we do kind of have like this mentality of like, keep your head down and just get the job done and stuff. And, there's, I suppose, value to that, but we just have to like, it feels like we just have to give people permission to like get angry about this, this could be you, this like, and so it's kind of been slow moving. People don't want to like get in trouble, I guess, whatever that means to them. But there's no question. People are disgusted, absolutely disgusted.
Brandon, I don't know how you're watching us, if it's Facebook or YouTube, but I will note in the chat, Stussy, and I think that's a IATSE brother in Atlanta, mentioned that you could that the Teamsters 728 and 528 do both show up to the Labor Council meetings in Atlanta, and that the Labor Council meetings in Atlanta are the second Wednesday of every month at the IBEW auditorium, and also that there were over 200 Teamsters at the MLK March on Monday in Atlanta. So so if you'd like to plug in, it sounds like there are opportunities, and there are already Teamsters participating. So Brandon, I appreciate your call. I don't know if there was anything else that you wanted to say.
Yeah, I was there on Monday with our Workers Against ICE stuff, and I got off the phone I left a message at the AFL-CIO right before I called y'all. So hope we can get something moving here.
All right, Brandon, thanks for your call. I appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all.
We got a caller from a 714 area code. I think I know who this is. Let's go ahead and bring them on the air. Caller from a 714 area code. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Buenas tardes, buenos días to everyone out there. My name is Jose Francisco Negrete. I'm a 27-year rank and file Teamster, going to be 28 in June. Part of Teamster Mobilize, also part of Labor for Palestine, LAOCIE, and part of the Boycott Home Depot Coalition. If you haven't forgotten, please continue boycotting or spread the word about boycotting Home Depot, because we're seeing, especially out here in Southern California, how Home Depot is complicit with these kidnappings happening everywhere. And I want to say Happy New Year to you guys and Happy New Year to everybody as well. I guess I want to cut this little part of the segment called Jose's Corner. So I want to address two things. One, Teamster Mobilize will have a meeting tomorrow. It's called Working Class versus Ruling Class, the fight against ICE, and our goals for TM tomorrow. 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 12 noon Central Time, and 10 a.m. Pacific Time. If you want to join us on Zoom, you could go on our socials, or if you could want to write this down, it's bit.ly/TM. /TM-022. So we'll be having a meeting tomorrow. And I just want to say, I heard a conversation with one conversation you had last week from somebody from Minneapolis. I forgot what the position was, and somebody that I think he was an author. And I just want to say, Minneapolis is holding it down. Unfortunately, they had to go through having two martyrs. Now it looks like it's, for sure Renee Good, and then the taking of Liam Ramos. I forget how old he was. I think it was a 5-year-old. It took that extent to get people activated, but we're here right now. We're seeing the overreach of the federal government upon our streets. And while the focus is on Minneapolis, which rightfully so, because Minneapolis right now seems to be the flashpoint, let's not forget that we still have these Gestapos in Maine. We still have them in Texas. I think there was a raid in Arizona as well, and out here in Southern California, where it basically kick-started everything off. It still continues. We've seen these guys get very too comfortable going up to schools. We saw that in Minneapolis. Now we're seeing it out here in Southern California, in all places. Well, it happened in LA a couple months ago too. I forgot what high school it was. I don't know if it was Santee High School. I think it was in downtown LA. But we saw it out here as well too in Anaheim, where they got too close to a high school. So, they're getting comfortable in hitting up schools. So hopefully the community will go out there starting next week and patrol these high schools, patrol these junior highs, patrol these elementaries to keep our community safe. And the brother was talking about that it was a little bit more than solidarity. It was a little bit more than a general strike. The only thing that's more than a general strike is a revolution. And, I'm not saying we're in the revolution point, but right now we're seeing as revolutionary ideas being accepted because of the overreach of the federal government. And to see the general strike yesterday, to see all those images, and I don't know what they got. I'll call it general strike, what happened in Minneapolis. To see all those images and to see all these cities have their own solidarity action was a beautiful thing, So I just want to say that. And we started this year off with terrible news, a couple of days after the new year, martyr Renee Good was taken away from us, but 2026, our goal this year should be solidarity and organize our workplace. We need to organize our workplace because we're seeing ICE go into these businesses. So we need protection. We need to hold these companies accountable. Like ICE does not have the free will to go into a private property, but they do because they have no respect to the law. They're above the law. So we still need to organize within our shop floor, but also organize within our community. Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Maine, Texas, Arizona. You're seeing communities organized, but we still need to keep on organizing. Our mission should not stop. The right is very, very well organized. This time that the left does that as well. And I'm glad to see that there was a call, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, with PSL, DSA, and some other organizations coming together, which was a beautiful thing, because you know what, we all need to be organizing together, because the time is now, you know. So 2026 is the year of solidarity, is the year of organize, keep on organizing in communities, organizing your workplaces, but we need to keep organized. And I want to say thank you, and keep up the good work, and Happy New Year to you guys, and let's keep on doing what we need to do.
Yep. Thanks, Jose. Appreciate it. Can Ben, do we have it set up where if I send you a link, you can go to the browser and play a video, and that would be heard on the stream? I'm just so, I mean, there are so many of these videos of these, you know, I mean, what else do you call them? Freaks. That I really don't think people outside of kind of a left liberal bubble are seeing, because you know, I mean, these guys are really being empowered by this administration to violate people's rights and to just abuse people. And there's a bunch of other clips that we've seen. I mean, we've seen ICE agents talking about how, didn't you learn from what happened a few days ago, referring to, you know, the execution of Renee Good. And we've seen people, you know, I mean, we have seen people profiling people, just these ICE agents just asking random people if they're U.S. citizens because they're brown, and they are, you know, maybe have some sort of accent or something. And we actually, and we've got, you know, Republicans being triggered at the insinuation that some of this racial profiling might be happening. We've actually got a clip of that I want to play for you in just a second. It's already loaded in our clips, and so it won't be hard to play. But maybe we've got this ICE clip from today, like just a couple of hours ago. But maybe we're able to play this now. Let's see if we can play this King clip.
It's not illegal to record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Why are you taking my information down?
Because we have a nice little database.
Oh, good.
And now you're considered a domestic terrorist. So
We're videotaping you? Are you crazy?
It's not illegal to record. You know, why are you taking my information down? And then it says, we got a nice little database, and now you're considered a domestic terrorist. I mean, these guys are like, these guys in this clip here, you know, I don't want to say, you know, I mean, I don't know that I'd have a problem with saying it, but I'm not saying here all ICE agents. These guys in this clip are power-hungry freaks who need to be removed from their positions of authority and never given a gun and a license to kill again, because that's what they've got right now. And they cannot obviously be trusted with that. And so here's the other thing that I wanted to talk about. You know, I mentioned that these guys are like, they are obviously in many situations racially profiling people. I mean, that is just undeniable. And actually, you know, I mean, they're called Kavanaugh stops because Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court wrote a decision allowing this racial profiling. And so I wish I had dropped this in my notes because there was I put the stuff for Kavanaugh stops. I had seen it. I read it the other day, and it's just so clear what is going on, and so it's bonkers that there are people pretending like this isn't happening. But let's see if I can find it on here. There are, you know, the Supreme Court has said that, you know, there are 4 ways to establish probable cause or reasonable suspicion for stopping a person, and that is, here it is, apparent race or ethnicity, speaking Spanish or English with an accent, presence at a particular location, and the type of work one does. If you just have those things, that is enough, according to the Supreme Court, for you to be stopped and asked if you're an undocumented person or not. Right? And so that is like definitionally profile. I don't know what else to say that is other than profiling. And if you don't recognize that, it's crazy. And so there's a bill in the Alabama State House that would allow Alabama Alabama law enforcement officers to basically be deputized by the federal government and detain people on suspicion of immigration violations. And there's all sorts of reasons you wouldn't want you wouldn't want local law enforcement enforcing federal immigration law, because you want immigrants, documented or not, to be able to call on local law enforcement when they have a problem. If you don't have that, then you could see crime and violence and exploitation proliferate in these communities further and victimize people even more. Because if every time you approach a cop, you are concerned about being deported, that would affect your willingness to interact at all with the cops, right? And so that's a big reason that this bill is bad. And it was introduced last week in the Alabama legislature, and there were a bunch of people that testified against it, including a preacher who adopted a Guatemalan child who is now a U.S. citizen and is concerned about, interacting with cops and stuff because of this bill, concerned about going out in public because of all the ICE stuff, and would be even more concerned about interacting with any law enforcement if this bill passes. And so he was there testifying on behalf of his daughter and, other people in his community against it. And, there are some people that got triggered, some law enforcement officers who are also legislators, who got triggered about the idea that maybe possibly sometimes law enforcement in the United States racially profiles people. Here is one of the state legislators. I think his last name is Bedsole. I think his first name is Roger or Russell, getting triggered by it. Let's play clip 1.
I've been in the profession 27 years, and I have never, not one time, been a part of or seen or been in the same room or encounter any directives, any policy, any unorganized agreement amongst officers to go out and target people based off the color of their skin, their nationality. And if this is a systemic problem, then I would believe in 27 years that I would have seen it somewhere.
Okay. So, now look, he used a lot of politician speak there, right? I never saw any policy or directive or agreement to racially profile people or whatever. And so, maybe if you confronted him about it, he would say, oh, well, of course I've seen racism and discrimination. I just never saw an agreement or a policy or a directive or whatever. Maybe he would wiggle out of it that way. But what he is responding to is obviously a concern about generalized discrimination, racism, and profiling and stuff. And so, it's not necessarily a concern that there's going to be a policy memo come from D.C. saying to racially profile people, right? That's obviously not the concern, but the concern is that this might happen and that that policy would be kind of implicitly pushed through the ranks. And so, the idea that you're responding to it with this kind of thing, with that lawyer speak, is so ridiculous, because it's if he meant it to be weasel words, it's non-responsive to the question. And if he meant it to be all-encompassing, then this guy is the problem, right? Because if you've been in law enforcement for 27 years in the state of Alabama and you have never seen racism or discrimination or any sort of problem with the way that cops interact with the community, then and you've never been in rooms where that's been happening, then you are not, either you're part of the problem or you are so disconnected from reality that, maybe people you should go to the psychiatrist and potentially take meds for for schizophrenia, right? Because you're not able to perceive the world as it is. And in fact, I thought it would be a funny thing to to look up where this guy is from, and to see, has there been any recent like problems with the police where he's from? And so I did look that up. And you may remember a couple of years ago, a small town called Vincent in Alabama actually abolished their police department. Like literally got rid of the whole thing because of racism in 2022, right? And they abolished it because there was the police officers were joking about pregnant slaves being a buy one get one sale, and they were so. That's just the first thing that came up. There was a lot of other stuff going on about it, and so and so this was the Vincent Police Department. And the racism and corruption and stuff was so prevalent in this police department that they decided to abolish it. And where, you might ask, is the town of Vincent? The town of Vincent is in Shelby County, where this guy works for the sheriff's office. Right? So literally just 4 years ago, a whole police department was abolished in the place that he represents. And he said, I've literally never seen a racism in my life. And I've been a police officer for 30 years. Well, buddy, you're the effing problem. If that's true, that's because you're racist. Right? So, I mean, good God. Right? I mean, it's just so crazy. And then I got another clip here just to illustrate, like, okay, Jake, well, maybe, sometimes Alabama police officers and Alabama law enforcement officers, maybe sometimes they're racist, but surely it's not federal law enforcement. Surely federal ICE is not doing this sort of stuff. Let's actually take a listen to ICE or to police officers in Minnesota and ask how off-duty police officers are being treated by ICE. Let's play clip 2.
As the last 2 weeks, we, as law enforcement community, have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. What we're hearing is they're being stopped in traffic stops or on the street with no cause and being forced to demand paperwork to determine if they are here legally. We started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them. I wish I could tell you that this was an isolated incident. In fact, many of the chiefs standing behind me have similar incidents with their off-duty officers.
Yeah, so there's I don't know what else to say. It's just it's such a stupid thing to say that you've been in law enforcement in Alabama for 27 years. And I've never seen a racism. I mean, why would you say that? And there's, and so then that second clip was meant to illustrate that there's a problem specifically with ICE, which is the genesis of the conversation for this bill in the Alabama State House. So yeah, I don't know. It's just it's so frustrating and stupid that we've got people who are willing to say stuff like this. So there you go. There's my thoughts on that. Adam, do you? Do you have anything else to add?
Just for reference, no, I appreciated that, but just for reference, it's House Bill 13, and it's Representative Ernie Yarbrough from Lawrence County that is behind this. Just wanted to put that out there for folks. And they were real nasty with the people who testified at the committee hearing, going back and forth with folks who testified, and it was pretty unusual and pretty gross.
Yeah, I mean, unironically, like, these guys got triggered, and it is a shame that we couldn't have got a, like, and obviously when you're when you go up to testify in the public comments for these bills, like, it is very uncommon that the legislators will actually respond to you, and so they were probably not ready for interactions with the legislators, but it is a real shame that we couldn't get like a skirt, just like, hold on, can you say that that again? You've been a cop in Alabama for 30 years and you never seen anybody do racism? Really? Like, really? You know, I mean, it's like, yeah, it would have been great if we could have had a record scratch there and just make him kind of say those things again because they're so stupid. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.